Hello, hello, hello. 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 here for CSM Practice, the podcast that brings you experts from around the world to make your customer success career and practice a lot better. And usually I bring in customer success executive or even a CSM or a CS ops person or even a CEO, all to talk about customer success. But today you're in for a special treat. And I'm bringing you a world expert on how to lead. Because if you're a CSM, you're leading your customers for sure. And you need to learn how to do that in an impeccable way. The better you are at leading, the better you get at getting outcomes for them and maximizing value for them and getting better relationships. But honestly, if you're a CSM, you also need to manage up, maybe not manage, but definitely lead everybody around you. You have that kind of power. And there's secrets to why some people gravitate towards others as leaders in a natural way. And today I'm going to share those secrets with you because I have none the other than a world expert here on how to do just that. So without further ado, Susan, maybe you could introduce yourself. Who are you? How long have you been doing leadership coaching? What brings you here to the show?
Sure. Thank you. It's nice to be here. My background is I had 30 years at the Boeing company in business operations. So I worked in the commercial side of it in development, so developing new airplanes. There, I led teams, small and large, across the world. And then after I left Boeing, I was in a startup in the same type of role, but with just a handful of people compared to the Boeing company. We worked on a hydrogen system. But in the meantime, what I was fascinated by and had a lot of passion for was understanding leadership and how to support people on their leadership journey, because this is how you get things done. We don't work in a vacuum. If you have a goal or we have a product or we have a service that we want to share with others, how we present ourselves is everything. And you'll notice that there's some people who, you said it in the introduction, seem to come by it naturally. And I will tell you this, there's nobody that comes by it naturally. The good leaders work at it.
How does this tie back to day-to-day work relationship with how we work with customers, how we manage up, or if we do have a team, how do we lead the team? Where do we bring those values? Why does this matter?
Well, again, it comes to your personal power and your confidence. If you know who you are and what's important and use that as a way to move through the world, to give direction, to convince people, to support people, people are more attracted to that. So your relationships are more filled with trust and transparency, and people want to be around you. When you're managing up, say, for example, you come with confidence. This is who you are. This is what you need. The person will respect that. Now, it may not be that you agree, but that's okay. At least it's out there and you can deal with that there and not be playing these games that what does he or she want me to say? I'm going to do this. It's acting from a place of confidence and love and respect versus fear.
Okay, I want to translate this in the entertainment world. I think people call it the it factor. Right? It's just like that je ne sais quoi. You just know that that person is super connected to themselves, what the heck they want from themselves. And so it almost puts a framework around where you're communicating from and where are you acting from. And when you have that internally, you don't even have to share your values. You just get that.
That's true. Yes.
It's that it factor, essentially. What we usually talk about in this podcast is specific playbooks, strategies, tactics. This is work you do on yourself, and it just shifts the way you interact in this world and how you show up for others. And people start getting you a lot faster and have respect for you a lot faster, even though you didn't change anything. But then again, you changed everything.
Everything. The thing that I find, so I coach and consult with my business partner, Debbie Collard. We have a Seasons Leadership. Because of our background, we have tools and practices and principles that we share with people on how to run a business. So what you're just talking about, that is tactics, playbooks, super important, but that's only half the equation. That's what you're doing. The other half is who you are and how you're being. You need both. And both needs
Can't agree
work.
more. I'm going to be real transparent with you. I've done that work maybe like 10 years ago when I just left Gainsight. I was having all these challenges show up while working at Gainsight. And I kind of knew that it was mostly about a work that I needed to do on myself. And I wasn't sure what was the work. And then I happened to come into this exercise that somebody asked me to do. And it was exactly about what we're going to talk about next.
Fantastic.
That was such a game changer. So I'm super, super excited. If some people on this video are watching me for a while now, you know, you've been to this podcast and I come across a certain way, it's because of that work. So whatever Susan is going to share with you, do that exercise. And if you find it hard to do it on your own, get an LLP coach or reach out to Suzanne or whatever it is. I think it's one of the most powerful things anybody can do in their lives, because then on a day-to-day basis, you can live and act closer to what is important for you and how you want to show up in the world. And that just creates happiness, not just leadership, Suzanne. That's what brought up for me. Yeah, I'm a very happy person, relatively speaking. Like there's some days where it's kind of like more gray than white being happy, gray and black being very somber and dark. But I would say that I have way more light days and lighter feeling in this world because of this exercise. And I do appreciate that you can be such a strong leader when you go through this work. And it was work. It was work to be honest with yourself. And it was work to then embrace that into your day-to-day goals, is the way that I live it in the past 10 years or so now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, I'd love to hear that. Well, should we just say what this is?
Let's, because it sounds so like simple. So I just wanted to bring this up. Like the impact is immense. She's going to say it and you're like, well, but stick with it, listen to the whole thing. And then if you're still not sure why this is like the best thing since sliced cake that you should definitely be doing if you haven't done it yet, or you think you've done it, but it's still, you get these challenges in your world, you probably haven't done it right. So Suzanne, what is this?
It's understanding and identifying your top values. And this is in life. You don't segregate into career or personal. This is your top values. And I will tell you, this is so interesting that you have done this and it was life-changing for you, because it was life-changing for me too. And there's lots of exercises out there on the web to do this. This is not rocket science. I actually, over my career and education, have done these value exercises where you select your top values and then you down select and then you pick your top 5. Simple. So I'm going to tell you a story, and it may be similar to yours, but because I went through college and graduate school and then coaching school and then through all the leadership training I got at Boeing, this was part of it. Just do your values exercise. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners have done this before, and they could probably name their top 5 values. When I went to this one course, and it was when I was getting my master's in management. It was an elective in coaching, which I never heard of before. So I thought, like, I don't know what this is, but I took it and here I am, a coach. So the professor was great. And she said, okay, you're going to do the values exercise. So I just said, like, I know this. Boom, 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 boom. There's my top 5 values. It's been this way for the last 15 years. And she said, do it again. What do you mean? She said, give it a little bit more thought. And so I did it. And she goes, do it again. This thing took me like weeks to do, but she said, think about this. This is not a check the box exercise. Think about what lit you up when you were a child. What was exciting? So I went through the whole thing, and through deep reflection, what I realized is my values are my values, and all values are good. I'm not giving any judgment, but I was a single parent for most of my career. And I started out with no money, and my top value for so long is safety and security. and
Mm.
family. I was taking care of my kids, and what was most important was that I had an income and safe place for them to stay and that kind of thing. So, which is important. It's not like it's not a value for me, but over the years, it didn't become so in my face. I had money, I had a safe place, they were in school. Actually, they were getting out of school. I realized that that still is part of me. I still have that. It's not that I've let go of it, but there was other values that I just wasn't honoring because of the time in my life and my circumstances. It turned out after this deep reflection that my top two values were wonder and awe.
Oh,
That was
what?
not on any of the lists, but she said, go back and do it again. She must have seen something in me that there was something more. When I got those two top, I still do. I get chills. So I know, like, oh, I hit something good here. And I realized most of my life had been working. I've been working hard,
Yeah.
taking care of these kids, and they were doing great, and my career was doing great. Everything was good, but there was this part that I was neglecting. Like, you can only do so much in your life, but now I was in a period of my life where I had some space, and so I used those as like a North Star to make my decisions on what I was doing next. So if a job came up, the first question I would ask is, will this job give me wonder and awe? And wonder and awe doesn't mean easy or anything. It just means, to me, because it's so personal, to me, it means, am I going to learn something? Are the people that I'm going to be work with exciting? Is it going to advance some change that I'm trying to do? And like, if I was taking a vacation, do I go sit on the beach? Maybe I need that because I'm so tired. Or do I go climb a mountain? When I tapped into these, I started making decisions that made my life more fulfilled. I felt like I was flourishing, much more happy. And it actually tied into my decision to leave Boeing when I did, because I had a great career. I love my work. I love my products, of the people who I worked with. But I thought, this time in my life, what would give me wonder and awe? And I thought, I've always wanted to start my own business. So this is how I moved into coaching. So it was life changing. If I hadn't taken the time to do this work, and this wasn't, by the time I figured this out to the time I left Boeing, was 10 years. So this wasn't like immediate, but it was always kind of in the back of my mind working on things. But if it wasn't for that, I think I would have just gone out with my regular plan, because I had a plan, because this is who I am, how long I'm going to work there, and then I'm going to retire, and then I'm going to do this. But all of that changed when I tapped into my values.
Well, I hear a couple of things. First of all, congratulations for doing that exercise. I certainly can relate. As I said, two things show up. One, having an accountability partner to push you to get to the right values, dig deep,
Yeah.
is important. And that's why I said get some help. I don't think I had some help. Like, I had some coaching when I did that. I thought I knew it too. Like, the first question that they asked me was a little bit of a different exercise, but I think the result was the
Yeah.
same. Things change. So sometimes
Yeah.
we need to tap in and say, okay, our situation is now different. Should we revisit what is important for us now? And I think in your world, what showed up for me in your story is that your coach identified that the values that you had were okay or were appropriate for when you were a single mom and still not sure. You had to embrace those values to just survive. And she wanted you to go from defense to offense.
That is exactly right.
If I wanted to do this and I've never done this exercise before, I want to do it again. Like myself, I
Yeah.
haven't done it in 10 years. I acknowledge there might be a merit in doing it again. What are some recommendations on how to approach next steps?
Oh, I've got a good one. So this is a little value card deck. I don't sell these. I don't get any kickback or anything from this, but I do know the people who put this together because I met them through my podcast, Seasons Leadership. I bought them, and these are so beautiful. They have all the different values that you can play with. They have exercises you can do. There's blank cards so you can write your own values. It's a great place to start. Easy. Again, this is tricky because it's so easy. People say, like, oh, I don't need to do this. simple but complex at the same time.
Let's say I have those cards. What's the
Yes.
best way to do it? Because it's one thing to have the cards and it's another thing to actually get the outcome. Do you do this by yourself? Do you meet up with a group of people over wine? Do you do it
Yeah.
with your team?
There's different prompts in here, but I've done it by myself and I just keep working at it. You can do it quick in an hour, but then I would just leave it. So what you do is you go through the cards and you say, this is a value, yes. Maybe this is value or no. And so you go through it. And it's sometimes you think like, oh, I got them all. Yes. Well, then you got to do it again. Then you combine and you do all this stuff, but let it marinate for a little while. And I'm just doing this by myself until I feel like, okay, this is pretty good. And then I share it with somebody close to me who knows me. And then we talk about it. Like, what does this value mean to you? Let's just look under what I put like awe. What does that mean? Because if I say that, I have a picture in my mind of what that is. You have a picture. It's not the same, I guarantee you. Then we talk about what is it that I mean by this and how does it show up in my life and how can I do more of it? And having somebody there to talk about that kind of makes it more clear. So then doing that, you kind of then move it around some more. Oh, maybe it's a little bit more of this, or maybe there's another word I can use and that kind of thing. So the idea is to get super clear and then just focus on 2 or 3. You're going to have a ton of values, but just focus on 2 or 3 and start to experiment with those in your life. How do they show up? Do more of that. Talk more about it. I'm sure, have talked about elevator speeches. When you meet somebody for the first time and you say, talk to them about 40 seconds. The part of that is not to download data because you can't do it that fast. The point of an elevator speech is to have somebody remember who you are and want to talk to you again. So throw in something about your values. I'm Susan Ireland. I'm a leadership coach. 2 of my values are wonder and awe, and I get so much wonder and awe when I talk to leaders and see the impact that they make in the world. And
I
then
don't know if I would ever say that to a person, not because wonder and awe are not my values, but I don't know that I would break a conversation like that. Listen, if it works for you, that's great. But for me, like my values, and there is a reason I picked those at the time that I did. One was kindness and one was compassion. And so when I got to meet somebody, I wanted to show up as a kind. And then whenever the opportunity was raised for me to be compassionate about something that I could never relate to, I would be pissed off. Then I would assume my compassion self to show up as a compassion person in an otherwise situation that I would be judging or a little bit aggravated. And so that's how I would show up. I wouldn't put it in a sentence, but I would embrace those values. And in fact, Susan, I would tell you that the first 3 years after I picked those values, every day my goal was to hit, I had 3 values, all 3 values. That was goals. I took this so seriously that I didn't even have any quantitative goals for my business. I started my business that year. It wasn't about revenues. It was just a platform to exercise these values.
That is fantastic. And how did it change your life?
Completely. I became a happy person. Like you said, there was more confidence in how I speak. And I showed up for myself the way I wanted to show up. Before, I would show up because I wanted to be maybe like what I thought was important is that I was successful. What I do was actually becoming like I was productive, I was successful, I was this and that. And then all of that did not matter anymore because what was more important, even if we were late, was more important was that I was compassionate. And so I was less angry.
How did that show up in customer success?
So I think, first of all, in my team, I showed up differently as a manager. Like to this day, maybe before I was considered like a very tough person to work with because I cared about results, productivity, outcomes. And now what I cared about was being compassionate and kind. And so the experience of working for me completely changed. And I would get completely different feedback from my team. To this point, I think 10 years into it, when they say you're one of the best, because I still see myself brass task as the, okay, Are we getting results? Are we being productive? That's first in mind. So I have to self-check myself. And so I always bask in, all right, you're doing something right. And it gives me joy to know
Yes.
that I made this change in my life and I am showing up the way I want to. And for customer success, obviously, I get customers for life.
Yeah.
Most of my customers still see me as a friend and somebody that they can confide in, that they want to keep in touch with, that they want to refer to, that they want to be on my advisory board. They want to champion for me. I don't think it's because the results I gave them or the productivity I used that with, but actually the way I showed up in those conversations.
I bet they would describe you as a kind and compassionate person.
Let me tell you, not a lot of people would say, oh, she's generous. Not that I wasn't, but my focus was completely different. They would used to say, actually, I remember 10 years ago, we were sitting at Gainset and did a round of conversation around all the ELT. Everybody told stories about themselves. And the biggest impression that people had as core value for me, I suppose, or my genius was that I was driven. How do you say, like a person with elbows? Like I got grit. That was
Yeah.
like the number one thing that showed up for people is that I have grit. I was like, I don't want to be like the one person that's known for her grit. Like I got grit, that's fine, but
Yeah.
I don't want to be Tombstone. She had grit. Like who cares?
It wasn't you. It's still part of you. Results are important. I would bet.
Yes, all
Yeah.
those skills and those strengths that I had before did not go away just before I embraced these new values
Yes.
or put them on a pedestal, like put them more at the top. It's just the approach and the
Right.
way I got to these results became completely different. And you know what? It did make all the difference in the
Yeah.
world.
It's true. And it's just talking to leaders from all different kind of companies and all different sizes of companies. This is not a natural thing for us to focus on because we're taught focus on what you're doing because it's so important. So it's just not a natural, feels like I'm taking my foot off the gas and to do this work on myself, but it's the other half of the equation. You have to have skills. You have to have those technical or types of expertise, but you also, it's how you are as a person. Together, you make up a whole person. And that's how we need to spend our life. And in that way, we can serve others in a positive way.
Absolutely. And I would say in customer success, we're so driven around maximizing value, getting outcomes. Man, you can never get to that unless you get the people aspect of it. You develop trust relationships. And so pick your values well so that you can
Yeah.
show up into those conversations. At the end of the day, people do business with people that they like, respect, and
Yes.
trust. So, how you show up in those customer conversations, I know most of CSMs have amazing EQ. I'm not too worried about that. But if you are a great CSM, maybe you moved from support or professional services where the intelligence around connections and like the skill set around building relationships and communication is not as important as being a CSMs. And you start seeing those frictions that Susan talked about earlier in the conversation. It's hard to get an enrollment conversations with management, with the rest of the team around making internal changes, or even with customers, just getting them to buy into your vision. Maybe this is one of those things that you may want to double down on and just see what happens. And with that, Susan, I want to appreciate you for coming on the show. I know customer success is not your area of expertise. It's not what you do on a day to day anymore, but you do show up for people who want to show up.
Mhm.
And so I thank you for taking the time today. Hopefully, this made a difference for some of those of you who are listening in and giving you something to hang in on and try for yourselves.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. So if you liked this video, please put in a comment below. We love seeing you interact and kind of understand what you liked and what you loved. If you have other people you'd like us to bring on the show, please put them in the comment below or reach out to me on LinkedIn. And with that, this is a wrap. I'll see you at the next podcast episode.